Welcome back to part 2 of this Lord of the Rings LCG hero tier list and buying guide. Still have a lot of champions to go, about 63 I think. So let's dive right back in. The next hero we'll take a look at is Erkin Brand. Now Erkin Brand is a hero that I like a lot in theory because he provides shadow card cancellation. Shadow card control is a defensive trait which is highly valuable in Nightmare quests. Against Nightmare Quest because there's some really nasty shadow cards there. Not a lot of really nasty shadow cards in normal modes. There are a few quests that have them. Generally you can get away with just ignoring shadow cards for the most part. But in Nightmare mode, you really have to have shadow card defenses, and Erkin Brand provides that. However, you have to deal 1 damage to him to cancel a shadow card effect just triggered, which reduces his ability as a defender and isn't something you can do repeatedly all game unless you have healing. He also takes up a leadership hero slot. He's a champion that for me just isn't quite good enough. If I were to use him in a deck going against Nightmare Quests, I'd be swapping him for maybe Leadership Frodo, maybe Galdor or something like that, maybe Denethor, Leadership Denethor. And each of those champions are just better than Erkin Brand because they provide multiple things. The shadow card control is nice, but it doesn't match Spirit Baragon's threat reduction or Tactics Baragon's cost reduction, given that you also get 1 more defense with either of those cards, and that does make quite a bit of difference. In many cases, though, you get 1 less attack and 1 less willpower with Baragon. Even so, I'll take Baragon over Erkin Brand in pretty much every case I can think of. Lord Faramir gets +1 for each enemy in the staging area. The problem with Lord Faramir is that if you run Lord Faramir, you can't run Ally Faramir. Ally Faramir is my favorite ally card in the game. There is virtually no deck I wouldn't run Ally Faramir in. And so if I had to drop Leadership Ally Faramir in order to play Lord Hero Faramir, I'd consider that a significant negative. And therefore this version of Faramir has to overcome that significant negative just to get any play at all. His stats are mediocre. In order to make his stats good, you need at least 2 enemies in the staging area, which is undesirable. You don't usually want to leave any enemies in the staging area. So for me, this hero is not good. He's really not good. I would classify him as fun because I like the character. No other reason than that. He's Galdor, he's a ranger. And I like the character, so I'd classify him as fun, but not going to beat much. Kind of the same as Tactics Frodo. I like the character, so I don't classify him as totally useless, but he's not beating much for me because of the downside of not being able to include Ally Faramir and his mediocre stats. Leadership Faramir. Oh, this is Leadership Faramir. Where is Lord Faramir? There we go. Got that sorted out. Leadership Faramir. After you engage an enemy, ready an ally you control. Well, that's a little better. His stats are still mediocre, and he still has the same problem that you can't play Ally Faramir. I think he's a little better than Lord Faramir. Lord Faramir at least has the benefit that you can play him with Leadership Boromir for like a brothers fun type build. I'd probably actually rethink that and rank Lord Faramir a little higher just for that deck. For the Boromir, Faramir, maybe Denethor type of deck, I've seen that one before and it seems like a lot of fun. And that deck could beat some decent quests, but mostly on the back of Denethor and Boromir, so Lord Faramir kind of hovers between these two categories, but I do think he belongs in a fun category. He's fun. Now, Leadership Faramir, you can't play him with Leadership Boromir. You could play him with Tactics Boromir, but that would kind of reduce the Gondor synergy since Leadership Boromir is good with Gondor, and Tactics Boromir not especially. So, Leadership Faramir, I just don't see much there. You get action advantage once per phase if you engage an enemy, which you're not going to do every time. The value of that ability is therefore maybe 1 resource. So this card is just not good. Not good. I would rank him... I'm torn between... I think he's just not good. I would rank him as for collectors only, which is a shame because I really like the character Faramir, book version of Faramir, not so much movie version. But book version of Faramir was one of my favorite characters from the book. So I'm sad that his hero version isn't better, but his ally version is my favorite ally in the game, so I'm not too sad. Fastrid. After Fastrid defends an enemy attack, return it to the staging area to reduce your threat by 2. Very interesting, and I've seen him in a deck or two that I thought was at least fun, if not decent. I don't think he's worth focusing on as much as the synergy cards here, the Ranger, the Traps, the Caldera deck. These are going to be more of the marquee cards that you build a deck around, and so I would rank Fastrid as a lower priority to buy than the cards in the tier above him. His ability, after he defends an attack, return it to the staging area, so you would use that in conjunction with something like Éomer or Dunhere to then do damage to the enemies in the staging area, and that's a fun combo. It requires cards to set up to make it good. Like you have to buff Éomer with spears and whatnot, or Dunhere. You have to run champions. The biggest problem with that combo is you're talking about a 2-hero combo, and neither of the heroes, Éomer, Dunhere, or Fastrid that you're running, are going to have very good willpower. So that limits you in terms of the options for the 3rd hero. And even so, your willpower is going to be a little bit gimped, which means it's not going to work super well against a lot of different quests, which is why it's going in the only beats few quests category. I've tried the deck and I found it pretty limiting in terms of what it can do willpower wise, and a lot of quests have kind of a willpower wall in the beginning that you have to get over, where you have to clear a location right away or something like that, or you don't even get off the ground and you just lose. So that's why Fastrid doesn't get higher, because his willpower is too low for a Spirit Champion, essentially. The too long didn't read version, his willpower is too low. Fatty Bolger. I actually recently used... did I use him? I think I actually... No, I didn't use him. I used another of the Hobbit champions recently in a deck. Fatty Bolger, exhaust him to choose an enemy in the staging area and raise your threat by that enemy's threat until the end of the phase that enemy does not contribute its threat. So you get more questing power at the expense of your own threat. Very low stats. I do not find this hero useful. I did not use him. I can't think of a situation where I'd want to. In a Hobbit deck, there are much more useful heroes. So for me, this hero is not good. Doesn't even belong in the fun category, in my opinion. This is you can safely ignore this hero. and not miss out on much. Unless you're a collector. Fulco Boffin gets -1 threat for each Hobbit hero you control. Discard Fulco to reduce your threat by 7. Well, that is a desperation move. The -1 threat for each Hobbit hero. If you were playing a Bonds of Fellowship hero, you could drop his threat to 3 and still get something out of his stats. 2-2-0-2, he's going to die to almost anything. Discard him to reduce your threat by 7. I don't find this hero useful. Very low threat. Seems like it could have some applications. But you get really nothing for the card. 0 defense, 2 health. What role are you going to have him fill while he's actually on the table? Apart from being low threat, I suppose that could have some value in some kind of niche fun quests, but he's not going to beat very much. So that seems to fit in this category. On his own, he's nothing, but he could have a place in some kind of niche secrecy fun decks. Wouldn't put him high on any buying list, though. Frodo Baggins. After Frodo's damaged, cancel the damage and instead raise your threat by the amount of damage limit once per phase. Phenomenal in progression mode. One of my favorite champions in progression mode. I used him to beat some very difficult quests. At least one that I can think of. I really like this hero in progression mode. He does fall off later though. He does fall off later. I found him less and less useful. So I would not call him an elite hero overall, but he was elite in progression mode. He was elite for a time. That's where he belongs. If you're playing progression mode, he's going to be very good for you. Starting pretty early. I think it was, what, Conflict at the Carrack? Yeah. So released relatively early in the game's life cycle, and he's very good at that time. And I really liked the hero for some of those early quests. But then he fell off later. Leadership Frodo Baggins, a hero I don't think I was that enthusiastic about when I first saw him after the Shadow in the East. Now I really like him, and my opinion is this is a very strong hero. I can't prove that he's elite yet. I suspect that he is, though. I suspect he has a place. Well, actually, I don't suspect it. I did use him to beat Nightmare Escape from Dol Guldur, and so I'm ranking him as elite. I don't know that a lot of other players would do that. I don't know that they wouldn't either, but based on the fact that I have used him to beat one of the hardest quests in the game, I'm ranking him as elite. And I do expect him to be good against some of the other hardest quests in the game. Now, he's not going to be in a 1 deck, because a 1 deck is supposed to beat every quest in the game on hard difficulty without any changes, and you would need to remove him from the deck against the Saga quests, which have a Frodo version already, and you can't play 2. So you'd have to make a change, and therefore he would not be a valid card in a 1 deck. But I consider him elite because I used him to beat one of the hardest quests in the game, and I considered him very important in that deck. Because when paired with Baragon, Spirit Baragon, he lowers threat. The two of them lower threat by 2 every round. He quests for 2 every round. He provides action advantage for somebody else to commit to a quest, which really effectively bumps his willpower to 4 if you're willing to pay the 1 cost every round. And I was usually in a Bond of Fellowship deck. Now, do I think Leadership Frodo would be good if you're not playing a Bond of Fellowship deck in a 3-hero deck? No, I do not. His stats are not good enough for that. So if you have no intention of playing a 3-hero deck, if you have no intention of playing a 4-hero deck, you can safely ignore. I would downgrade him significantly from elite if you're not planning on playing 4-hero decks. If you're just going with 3-hero decks, I don't really think Frodo's much of anything. Leadership Frodo. I could be wrong about that. I haven't play tested it too much. But I think he's exceptional in a Bond of Friendship deck. Because I used him to beat Escape from Dol Guldur Nightmare. So, my opinion is that he is elite. Potentially I could make a case for, maybe he belongs more in A. Beats many hard quests, but some hard quests he can't beat just by virtue of not being eligible for them. Mount Doom being one that comes to mind. It's one of the hardest quests in the game. And Frodo's not eligible for that quest, so let's put him in the A tier. Fun, beats many hard quests. Not quite elite though. Because he's really only good in a 4-hero deck, and because he can't be used against the saga quests. And therefore his buying tier should be reduced a little bit for those reasons alone, because you don't really want to be buying heroes that you can't use sometimes, and Frodo, Leadership Frodo is that. Though I do consider him very, very strong in a Bond of Friendship deck. Galadriel. A very unique champion, not really anything without Nenya. Cannot quest, attack, or defend. Nenya allows her to effectively quest. Allies you control do not exhaust to commit to the quest during the round they enter play. Exhaust Galadriel to choose a player. That player reduces threat by 1 and draws a card. I loved her in a Sylvan deck. I like her in a variety of decks. I'm putting her in the fun and beats many hard quests category. I'd have her fairly high on my list of heroes to buy. She's a lot of fun, and she's very powerful. So, this is definitely a champion worth consideration for some very powerful decks. Very good in progression mode, very fun to play. I like this champion a lot, very unique. 4 willpower is not common at all. I think it's just Eowyn and her. You have to get Nenya out of your deck to make use of that 4 willpower. Her ability allows you to, helps with that a little bit. Reduce threat and draw a card. She can be pretty weak if you don't find Nenya right away, which is her major downside, and that's what keeps her from being elite. But she's definitely fun and beats a lot of hard quests as she is quite powerful. Galdor of the Havens. After drawing your setup hand, instead of taking a mulligan, you can discard any number of cards from your hand and draw that many cards. He has a use in a Noldor deck. He's not a huge player in that deck. I wouldn't consider him essential to it. I'm putting him in C+ category. He's a champion worth a look after you've got some of the fun synergistic champions from the B category, after you've got the fun and powerful champions from A, certainly after Elite. Then maybe you start taking a look at champions like Galdor. If you have no cards in your hand, draw 6 per game. That seems like it might be good with Eristor in some situations, but it's kind of a late game ability because you're not going to have the resources to play that second hand before he gets discarded at the end of Eristor's round. Early in the game, though you might late game. So he's a champion worth a look after a bunch of other champions have been looked at. But not much more than that. Stats are mediocre. It's really his ability that you'd want, and maybe the Noldor synergy. Hero Gandalf. One of my favorite heroes. I have him ranked as an elite hero. Play with the top card of your deck face up. Once per phase, you can play the top card of your deck as if it was in your hand. That provides a lot of card draw. And you can't really talk about Hero Gandalf without talking about his attachments, Wizard Pipe and Gandalf's Staff, which provide resource generation and or card draw and or shadow card control. His high threat is a limitation. His lack of a sphere can be a limitation. His stats are good, but not exceptional. Nonetheless, he is an elite hero, one I would put a high priority on buying, especially in progression mode. But even afterwards, if you build a deck around Hero Gandalf, you're going to be pretty happy with its performance. This is a very, very strong hero, especially with his attachments. So I like this hero a lot. One of my favorites in the game. You really can't go wrong with any of these heroes in S or A tier in terms of fun, playability, power. You can go wrong with some of these heroes in the B tier. They're fun, not always going to be powerful though. Galdor Inglorian. Pay 1 resource from his resource pool to choose a player to draw 1 card. I have this hero ranked as another fun and beats many hard quests. He's very strong. That card draw ability is very, very good. He can't be used in 1 or 2 quests because there's an ally version of him as part of the quest. 3 willpower is very strong. He's overshadowed a little bit by Leadership Denethor, but I've seen him used in a deck that's beaten almost every quest in the game. I think he's very, very, very strong. I could even make a case for him for Elite. But he can't be used in a 1 deck, and that's why I'm not putting him in Elite. Owing to the fact that you can't use him in 1 or 2 quests because he is involved in the quest as a objective ally. So I've got him in A tier, a high priority champion but not elite. Gimli, one of the core heroes. He is exceptional, or very, very good in progression mode. Falls off quickly after that. Not going to say too much about him since you get him as part of the core set, but I like him about the same as core set Aragorn. He's very strong in progression mode, but he falls off, and I didn't use him much after a time. Leadership Gimli. After Gimli's declared as a defender, spend 1 resource from his pool or ready another hero. If that hero is Legolas, he gets +1 attack. That's fun. I love the idea of a version of Gimli that pairs with Legolas so that they're better together, and that is awesome. It just isn't that good. He is a lot of fun, but I wouldn't put him in the category, the B category, who are all kind of heroes that unlock an archetype. Gimli doesn't do that, but he is a lot of fun paired with Legolas, no doubt about that. I wish he was more powerful and I could rank him higher, like in the A tier with Legolas. I would have enjoyed playing him quite a bit, but unfortunately he's just not that strong, so if you buy him to play with Legolas for fun, but don't necessarily expect it to be pounding hard quests into dust, because he's not going to accomplish that, in my opinion, but he is a lot of fun to play with Legolas. Glowin. Glowin was part of some pretty OP combos once upon a time. He's pretty good in progression mode. He fell off after that. There was some kind of like infinite resource generation combos, I believe, at one point in the game. If those still existed, he could certainly be considered an A or an S tier outside of progression mode, but as he is, I've got him in A in progression mode. He's a core set hero, so there's not much point in talking too much about him. He's strong. He was part of some cool combos. Falls off over time, though, and I didn't really look at him too much after that. Glorfindel. I think I maybe used him in one quest, Journey to Rosgobel. So, yeah, about the same as Lord Denethor. Not too much use out of this champion. His stats are okay. His ability isn't that useful. His threat is high. And he's horribly overshadowed by Spirit Glorfindel. So you're really not going to get too much use out of him, but you get him for free in the core set. Spirit Glorfindel. Spirit Glorfindel is unequivocally OP. In progression mode, outside of progression mode, this is one of the best champions in the game. I would rank him second overall, only behind Elrond. Gandalf probably belongs a little higher. I'd prioritize him after Baragon, but only just. But Spirit Glorfindel, he gets ranked second. Eowyn, Tactics Eowyn is, in my opinion, the best champion we've looked at so far. Spirit Glorfindel, second best. You base a deck around those two, you're going to be happy. No doubt about that, in my mind. They are very, very, very strong champions. After Glorfindel exhausts to commit to a quest, raise your threat by 1. He starts at 5 threat, and when you add, what is the card called, Light of the Valinor or something like that, then he doesn't have that threat penalty anymore. You can also give him Asphaloth. I was sad to see him not included in the movie, but I'm glad his card version is OP. He was OP from the minute he entered the game, and he remains one of the best champions in the game today, even after all the cards have been released. Very, very, very good hero. Grima. Hero version of Grima. Lower the cost of the next card you play from your hand this round by 1. The card game's doomed 1. Once per round. Cost reduction from lore is fairly rare. Grima actually can be quite good if you build the right deck around him. I would not put him as a very high priority buy, because the doomed player card archetype never really came into its own, in my opinion. So I have him ranked as a fairly low priority buy. However, I have seen decks where I felt he was used well and became quite powerful. I'm not sure he'd be very good in multiplayer. Maybe he would be fine in multiplayer. I don't know. Guess it depends on how much... I mean, threat affects the whole group, right? Yeah. In solo, though, I've seen him be part of a powerful deck where he came into his own. But I wouldn't rank him as a high priority buy, because I didn't find the doomed archetype as much fun as I did Dunedain or Dale or Gondor. I found those decks more fun. Grima, I don't think he's part of an elite deck. Although that's possible. It's possible, but as of right now, I have him ranked as a fairly low priority buy. If I were buying all the heroes again, I'd put him fairly low on the list. Grimbeorn the Old, a hero I absolutely loved when he came out. After he defends an enemy attack, spend 1 resource to declare him as an attacker, and the defending enemy gets -2 for this attack, so that effectively gives him 5 attack. I loved this champion at the time he was released. I put him as A in progression mode. A lot of fun to play. I don't think he's elite overall. He was really, really fun though, for a time. And he can have attachments, which is great. You can buff him up. In the long extended party quests, they've expanded the Bjorning synergies, so that can elevate him more a little bit. I wouldn't prioritize him as much as like an Amarthiel or the Dale cards, but I really enjoyed playing that hero in progression mode. I don't think he was quite as good as Bjorn, but I really enjoyed. By the way, Grim Bjorn the Old is the son of Bjorn, so they could be played together. And that would be fun, but would have 0 willpower at all. But if you were playing multiplayer mode where you could get away with that, that would be a lot of fun. But I can't rank him as high as Bjorn. I like Bjorn better. I played Bjorn in more quests and found him OP for a longer period of time in progression mode. Why here? 4 attack is great, but 13 threat, he can't have restricted attachments, and he doesn't ready during the refresh phase, which after an Eagle ally enters or leaves play, ready him once per phase. I just don't like that card. I don't think it's good. I don't think the Eagle deck is generally good, though I did use some of the Eagle cards to great effect in 1 or 2 of the quests that required battle or siege questing. But I never used Gwai here, and I never considered it, and I never felt like I was missing anything, so I ranked that hero as good for collectors only. Just not a fan of the Eagles. The all-out Eagles deck is not my cup of tea. Others may disagree. Gotten some messages about Eagles in the past, so your mileage may vary, and if you really like the Eagle template, you could perhaps try to force this card into working in a deck. I don't think you're going to beat much, but you could maybe elevate him to the fun but not beating much category instead of just good for collectors only. But I don't think that I don't like that hero because the not readying during a refresh phase rapidly becomes a big deal. Makes him weak early until you get Eagle allies entering or leaving play. And weak early is bad in solo. Halbarad, a Dunedain ranger. While you are engaged with an enemy, Halbarad does not exhaust to commit to a quest, which is nice. You may optionally engage 1 additional enemy during the encounter phase. He's not necessary to play the Dunedain template, and you already have a Amarthiel, and you're never not playing a Amarthiel in a Dunedain deck. At least I can't think of a reason. And are you going to want 2 leadership heroes in a Dunedain deck? Maybe, but I tend to think not, so I'd have him a lower tier than a Amarthiel, who's the guy for the Dunedain deck. And could you potentially play like a Monosphere leadership Dunedain deck? Yeah, maybe. It probably wouldn't be many hard quests, but it'd probably be fun. So I think he fits in this category. It's the other fun but not super good champions. Heroes. Haldan. 2/3/1. While the active location has an attachment, Haldan does not exhaust a quest, and when the active location is explored, draw 1 card for each attachment on it. So this kind of unlocks a new template, which is attachments on locations. I tried it. It can be good, and I know there are some players really trying to make this card work with some degree of success. I think he can beat the template can beat some very hard quests. I think it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't necessarily rank it higher than any of these. These are more or less the order of fun that I would put these archetypes in. Dale comes first for me. Dunedain, Gondor, traps, location attachments, and then Caldara. I don't have a better name for it than that. That's pretty much the buying order I would have for the different archetypes. And I found the active location attachments thing fun, but inconsistent, because you don't always have an active location. So sometimes you're just sitting there with cards in hand waiting to make this work. But when it does work, it's very swingy, like nothing can happen and then suddenly your hand's full. It's fun to play. It's inconsistent though. But there's potentially a deck out there that could make this work really, really well and be very powerful. I haven't seen it yet, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Haldir of Lorien. I believe I used this hero for a difficult quest. If you have not engaged an enemy this round, exhaust Haldir to declare him as an attacker against an enemy not engaged with you. So if you keep your threat low, you can use Haldir with like a bow. I forget what it's called, a Sylvan bow, to deal some real damage to the staging area, and that can be quite good in 1 or 2 quests. Not a lot of quests though. I would rank him as sometimes useful in progression mode because that's how I used him. He was decent in progression mode in a couple of quests, but then I didn't use him too much after that. Kind of same as Lore Aragorn or Dian in solo play. Of course, Dian in multiplayer is exceptional. But I found him fun to use and good against 1 or 2 hard quests in progression mode, but kind of fell off after that, so I wouldn't rank him as a high priority buy. Hama. After Hama is declared as an attacker, return a tactics event from your discard pile to your hand, then choose and discard 1 card from your hand. Limit 3 times per game, so you could get multiple usages out of a tactics event. Well, this card, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he used to be more powerful than he is. He used to not have the restriction of 3 times per game, and therefore he could be part of some OP combos. Later, in his current iteration, I didn't find much use for him. Recycling tactics events, you could make some pretty cool combos if there wasn't the restriction on the number of times you can do that, but there is. And therefore I found his abilities to be limited. And I didn't get much use out of him. So I'll have him ranked maybe one of these 2 tiers. For me, I think it's just not going to beat much, but potentially there are some fun combos around him. In his old mode, I think he was pretty strong at the time. But not now. After the errata. Hergon. After Hergon quest, successfully play a tactics ally from your hand, reducing its cost by 1. Then you may raise your threat by 1 to give that ally +1 and +1 until the end of the round. So he provides some cost reduction at the cost of threat, and only after he quests successfully with his 2 willpower, which means your tactics hero is unavailable for battling or defending, which is not ideal unless you're running more than 1 tactics hero, which isn't often. So for that reason, I don't have Hergon ranked very highly at all. Not useful to me in any capacity that I can really think of. I would put him as a very low priority to buy. Herluin the Fair, a essential part of the Outlands deck. I played the Outland Swarm deck to great effect against a great many quests, and it was highly, highly effective. Therefore, I have him in the A tier, along with Aristor. Together with Leadership Denethor, they were very, very, very powerful for me and helped me beat a great many very difficult quests in progression mode. That's the reason for his ranking. He's not elite because Outlands isn't good against everything. Quests that punish Ally Swarm, he's going to struggle against that. And there were a few late in the life cycle of the game that he couldn't be used against. And I don't necessarily know that he's good against a lot of Nightmare quests, so I don't think he's bad against a lot of them either. But the Herluin Aristor Outlands archetype, it doesn't have great defenses against shadow cards or locations, or nasty locations, or threat reduction. And so I have him in the A tier, but not the S tier. But the Herluin, Aristor, Denethor deck, Outland Swarm, very, very, very powerful and beats a lot of stuff and is relatively easy to build. And I would recommend it for anyone who wants to build an OP deck on a relatively low budget. And there are many examples on my channel where I played this deck. Idrian. 2 willpower, 3 attack, 2 shields. After locations is explored, ready Idrian. It's not going to happen that much. I wouldn't put a lot of value on that. She's a scout. There is such thing as a scout archetype. But yeah, she's fun, but not beating that much, I've found. I don't think much of this hero. Her ability is maybe worth, I don't know, a quarter of a resource or something. I mean, for 2 resources and a card, Unexpected Courage gives you a ready every round. You're certainly not going to get that with Idrian. Maybe half a resource, maybe a quarter of a resource is what that's worth. Not much to speak of, which means she relies mostly on her stats, and her stats aren't that much to speak of themselves. They're not that good. With 1 more attack, she could have been something. And her threat's relatively high as well. She's got Dunedain and Scout synergies. So not totally useless. Could be involved in some fun decks, but not that good. Khalil. Well, the cycle that the Mumakil was part of got some very, very good allies. Jubiar and Furial are 2 of the best allies in the game. However, I never really found Khalil to be that good. You can use resources from his spear to pay for any Harad ally cards. Harad as a archetype was a bit underdeveloped. Discard a Harad ally from your hand to ready a Harad character. Well, that gives you a use for the duplicate Harad cards that you draw, because the best ones are unique and you want to run 3 copies, but then you won't have a use for the duplicates. This ability gives you a use. His stats are really mediocre, though. That's really where this hero suffers. If he had 3 in one of those categories, he'd probably be a different story. But as he is, I would rank him a fairly low priority buy. Now the allies, the Harad allies, such as Jubiar or Furial, and potentially even Yazan, are very, very, very good. But Khalil is fun, but not that good. In my opinion. Maybe you could rank him as high as tier C+, but I tried him maybe once. I didn't find him particularly good at all, and his allies, though, are exceptional. The Harad allies. Lanwin, another scout, a Dale. After an encounter card with Surge is revealed, either ready Lanwin or give her +2 willpower until the end of the phase. Limit twice per phase. How many times per game is that going to happen? You see like 1 or 2 surges per game, which means she's really relying on her stats, and her stats are not good. I have this card ranked for collectors only. Even in a scout deck, I think you'd go with Idrian. In a Dale deck, No, there are better options. Bard, Son of Brand. I would not recommend this hero. Tactics Legolas, a core set hero. After he participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, plays 2 progress on the current quest. He's quite good in multiplayer in the core set, being a ranged hero. He's not much to speak of. Oops, that's the wrong champion. Lanwin. He's not much to speak of outside of multiplayer. I have him as a multiplayer focused champion. I don't think I used him much in solo play, but I did find him useful when I played with my friends. So that's where I'd put him. He's a core set hero though, so you get him in any case. Legolas. Spirit version. After Legolas commits to a quest, discard a card from your hand to ready another hero. If that's Gimli, he gets +1 willpower. So he's obviously meant to be paired with Gimli, and pretty obviously meant to be paired with Leadership Gimli. And together they are quite fun, but not particularly powerful, unfortunately. I would have liked to see them be a little bit stronger than they were, so that the Legolas Gimli deck could become a force. As it was, I found it very fun to play, but not particularly powerful. LOTR 3 willpower is nice. If Éomer is in play, LOTR gains Rohan. After she commits to a quest, choose an ally in your hand. If that ally shares a trait, put that ally into play exhausted and committed to the quest. At the end of the phase, if that ally is still in play, shuffle it into your deck. Well, she needs strong card draw, because otherwise you're going to burn through all your allies using them to quest, and then you don't get anything else out of them, and then they disappear. So you need very strong card draw. But even with that, I don't think this hero is good. The combination with her and Éomer might be thematic, but not especially powerful at all. And I don't really see her being that much fun to play either. It's not very satisfying to kind of cycle through allies that way, in my opinion. So I have her ranked as good for collectors only. Maidlung. After you engage an enemy, add 1 resource to Maidlung's resource pool. Limit once per phase. Well, that could be decent in a deck that's designed to engage a lot of enemies. How do you design a deck to engage a lot of enemies? You're limited by the enemies that actually come out. So there's not really a way that you can set up this ability to make it any more OP than the encounter deck will allow you. Some are just not designed with that many enemies. Yeah, I like this champion a little bit, this hero a little bit. Resource generation and tactics is pretty rare. I don't have him as very powerful though. I don't think he's very important to buy. So I'd rank him pretty low on the buying list. Once again, that's the wrong guy. Pretty low on the buying list. Mostly due to his weak stats. You'll notice nearly all of the heroes in this tier down here have pretty weak stats and abilities that don't do much to compensate for them. The heroes in the C+ tier are a bit better in terms of the stats and or have a bit higher value abilities or specific roles to play. Maidlung doesn't fall into any of those categories. I give him... the only reason I'm not putting him in good for collectors only is because he may have a use in like a Dunedain deck that wants to engage a lot of enemies. But you only get the resource once, so even then, not really, I'd say. Not really. I don't even know why he's in the fun category at all. I do recall kind of having fun with him once, maybe. You could probably put him in for collectors only, too. I think he belongs more there. Merry. Merry's actually a hero I've gotten some comments about. I guess some players really like him. After an enemy is revealed from the top of the encounter deck, exhaust Merry to reduce your threat by that enemy's threat. So he provides some consistent threat reduction when enemies are revealed. You have to keep him ready in order to do that or give him action advantage. Which means when an enemy isn't revealed, then his willpower just does nothing. Which isn't very good. His threat's low, he helps with secrecy. I'd have him in fun, but not that powerful. I didn't find him that good, but I did find him fun to play. I certainly wouldn't put him as high priority a buy as the Bard cards, a Marthiel, Leadership Boromir, etc. So I can't see how he belongs any higher than that on the buying list. But, he got some uses in terms of his threat reduction. And therefore, you could use him in secrecy, hobbits, that kind of thing. Tactics version of Merry. I really enjoyed Tactics version of Merry in progression mode. He was a lot of fun there against like the Black Riders quest. Gets +1 for each attack for each Hobbit hero you control. So if you have 3 Hobbit heroes, you can have 3 attack for only 6 threat. And after he participates in an attack that destroys an enemy, ready another character that participated in that attack. I liked him a lot in progression. He fell off after. He's always going to be a decent choice in a Hobbit deck with his low threat and his potentially 3 attack. Doesn't require you to be engaging an enemy with lower engagement cost, which is common in the Hobbit cards. So, yeah, a reasonable choice in progression mode. I enjoyed playing him, but he fell off for me after that, and I didn't look at him too much again. Merloned. 2/2/1/3. Each hero you control with a lore resource icon gets -1 threat cost. So if you got 3, then she's got pretty low threat. I played her maybe once or twice in progression mode and found her good, I think. So I have her as occasionally useful in progression. Certainly not a high priority buy. There are some decks where she fits in well. She doesn't really unlock any new archetype. Monosphere lore would be where she fits in the most, and that's not going to be played too often. But from time to time, she is Sylvan. The low threat is her primary appeal. But it's not sufficient appeal that you're going to get a lot of use out of her over the life of the game, and therefore she's not a very high priority buy. Even in progression mode where I played her once or twice. Didn't really play her, can't imagine really playing her outside of that mode. Na'Asia, a lot of fun to play. Resources can't be used to play for an ally, which is a huge limitation. While she's attacking or defending, spend 1 resource to give her +2 or +2. So I enjoyed playing her a lot. I think I even used her on one quest that was fairly difficult. But never again after that. That not being able to pay for allies is just too big a limitation. And needing to spend resources so that you don't get much use out of her like tactics events or attachments, because you're always using her resource to attack or defend. But I really enjoyed playing the card. I found it very different and fun to play when I played her in a deck, and I think it was a reasonably different quest I played her against. Reasonably difficult quest I played her against, and she was an important part of that deck. But I don't think I looked at her again after that. Nori. Nori replaced Dwalin, I believe it was, for me in my dwarf deck that I was playing at the time, so I used him sometimes in progression mode. After you play a dwarf character from your hand, reduce your threat by 1. I found him more consistent than Dwalin, who does something similar. Pretty much just better than Dwalin. But outside of the dwarf deck, he's not good, and he fell off for me after that. So I played him a little bit in progression mode, and then he fell off and was never seen or heard from again. Certainly not a necessary buy outside of progression mode. Owen. While you control at least 5 dwarf characters, Owen gets +1 attack and gains the tactics icon. Well, even with the +1 attack, his stats are mediocre to the nth degree. I think Owen can be safely ignored, even in a deck that's designed to dwarf swarm. I don't think he's very good. I'd still go with Nori. +1 attack isn't really anything to speak of. I suppose there's a use case where you'd really need the tactics resource icon in the dwarf deck but not want to play a tactics dwarf. That'd be about the only reason I'd use him. Since there is theoretically a use for him, I'll put him in not totally useless, but pretty close to totally useless. And the use case is pretty rare. You can safely ignore that hero. Ori. If you control at least 5 dwarf characters, draw 1 additional card at the beginning of the resource phase. Now that is something. This is a hero strongly worth considering in a dwarf swarm deck. The ability to passively draw an additional card is quite good. I would definitely consider that hero in that deck, and therefore he's going in the fun and beats a few hard quests category. He's not unlocking any new archetypes. He's not super strong on his own. In fact, he's not good at all on his own outside of the dwarf swarm deck. But in that deck, this is a very good option because drawing 1 additional card passively is very good. His stats are mediocre though, so he's going to be weak early before you get the 5 dwarves out. And in solo, that's not good, which is why he's not a very high priority hero. But in the dwarf swarm deck, he'll be a strong contributor. Pippin. Spirit version of Pippin. Pretty weak stats, very weak stats. If each hero you control has the Hobbit trait, Pippin gains, after an enemy engages you, raise your threat by 3 to return to the staging area. That's rarely desirable. Rarely desirable. One of the more useless heroes. For me, just not good. I would not really recommend anyone to seek out this hero. So he's going in the F tier. He is not good. The stats are so incredibly weak. The only thing he conceivably has going for him is his low threat. But yeah, you can ignore him. There's better versions of Pippin, better Hobbit heroes to use from the Spirit tier. No thank you to Pippin. Lore Pippin. Also the same stats. Each enemy in play gets +1 engagement cost for each Hobbit you control. After you engage an enemy with engagement cost higher than your threat, draw a card. Now that's much better. Much, much better. I loved Pippin in progression mode against the Black Riders expansion, so along with Merry, I have him as useful in progression. Pretty fun. Not going to beat a lot of hard quests, but pretty fun. I enjoyed Hobbits from time to time. Never found them especially powerful, but I enjoyed playing him from time to time along with Merry and usually Sam. So the Black Riders expansion is where you'll get him, and you'll get him along with Mary. And it's enjoyable, but not going to be super powerful for the rest of the life of the game. Prince Imrahil, an interesting hero. Similar stats to Aragorn, in fact, almost identical except for one less health. And after a character leaves play ready, Prince Imrahil, limit once per round. There's a way to design a deck that takes advantage of that. He's a Galdor hero. I wanted to like him more than I did. It's hard to justify using him over core set Aragorn as they fulfill a similar role, but Aragorn fulfills it more reliably. I can't put him in the B category, which are all heroes that unlock new archetypes. Prince Imrahil doesn't really do that. So I used him maybe once, maybe twice. Didn't find him very powerful. Didn't really touch him after that. You can build a deck around him, make it decent. I wouldn't put him as a high priority buy though. Tactics Prince Imrahil. Exact same stats. Spend one resource from his resource pool. Search the top 5 cards of your deck for an ally who shares at least one trait and put that ally into play. At the end of the phase, if that ally is in play, shuffle it into your deck. I don't really like that mechanic of putting an ally into play for one phase, basically for combat, and then off he goes. Costs a resource. You'd be getting a Galdor card, I suppose, or a warrior potentially. I mean, one resource to block an attack if the right card is in the top 5 cards of your deck. One resource to block an attack isn't terrible. One resource to get an extra 2 attack. It's going to be decent when it works. It's a decent ability when it works. I'd rank him similar to his other version. I didn't find a deck where I really wanted this hero. You'd certainly never include him in a vacuum over like Tactics Eowyn or something like that. You could build a deck around him to take advantage of his ability, and it'd probably be fun, and it'd probably be a few hard quests. I don't think it'd be anything super powerful. But it would be fun in the right deck. Quick Beam. A rare 4 attack hero. Can't have restricted attachments, which is common to Ents. Deal 2 damage to Quick Beam to ready him. Once per phase. So you can do it twice for free, and then after that it's gonna be, you're gonna need some healing to continue taking advantage of it. I would put him in the fun beats some hard quest category. He could be paired with Hero Treebeard, with like Yorith or Warden of Healing to heal the damage off of the 2 of them, and it would be quite fun and pretty powerful in terms of the damage it could deal. I could see Quick Beam being ranked higher up this list. Oh, I guess I didn't need an additional tier. Learned something new. I never really experimented with Quick Beam as much as I wanted to, but in concept, I think he's very good. The problem is, Quick Beam paired with Treebeard is pretty high threat already. However, I think they synergize pretty well in that they both take advantage of healing, so Quick Beam as your primary attacker, I like it. Never experimented with it as much as I wanted to. So I wouldn't put him as a high priority buy, but in theory I think he's pretty fun. He should be pretty fun to play with Hero Treebeard in an Ent deck. Radagast. I love this champion, this hero. I've seen him be used in some very, very strong decks. You may use resources from his pool to pay for creatures of any sphere. After you play a creature, he doesn't exhaust a quest this round. 3 defense. Some creatures that you may want to use with him would be Giant Bear in particular, one of my favorite allies in the game. Potentially allows for a new archetype, and therefore I have him in the B tier. I don't think he's an elite champion, an elite hero. He's Istari. You can use him with the other Istari cards. Wizard Pipe, I think. Word of Command. Word of Command could be good with him. I know there's 1 or 2 players who think he's elite. I see elite heroes as must-buy heroes for powerful decks. I don't think Radagast is that, but I do think he unlocks a pretty powerful archetype of creature cards, such as Giant Bear, which you could play without playing a Tactics hero. I think he's good in Bond of Friendship decks. Yeah, this is where I believe he belongs. I wouldn't put him higher than that. Higher than that, you'd expect to be kind of like standalone heroes, good in more situations. I think he's a strong supporting hero. Unlocks a new and interesting archetype, the creature deck. Don't think he belongs higher than that. Rossio. If the active location shares a trait with a location in the victory display, Rossio gets +2 willpower. If the attacking enemy shares a trait with an enemy in the victory display, Rossio gets +2 shields. Well, either of those are very good, but she doesn't get them right away, and it takes a little setup to get there, so she's weak early, and therefore not good in solo play. I never used her or really thought about using her. So I have her, and fun to use, but not going to really beat that much. Sam Gamgee, my favorite of the Hobbit heroes. I think he's the best of the Hobbit heroes. That came in the Black Riders set. Frodo Baggins is a Hobbit hero I thought was better, but he was a lot of fun to play in progression mode. Fell off later, but I really enjoyed playing him in some Hobbit decks. And I believe I recently used him in the Scouring of the Shire quest. And I enjoyed that. So, I have him as an A for progression mode, but not super good outside of progression mode. But he is a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun to play. Hobbit deck, because it's very unique and very thematic. Saruman, a hero I really wanted to like, but the limitation of only being able to reduce your threat by 1 at a time is huge. His stats are great, 3 willpower, 4 attack. The Doomed template I didn't think much of and didn't get much use out of. So, sadly, I have him in fun but not beating much, along with Grima. I really can't recommend him any higher than that. Though I really wanted to like the card. And I tried to make it work. And I think I did use it in a quest or 2, but ultimately he's just overshadowed by other heroes that do what he does more effectively. And the Doomed archetype I didn't really find to be anything. Smeagol. Very fun, very thematic hero. Shuffle 2 copies of Stinker into the encounter deck, which I believe, if I'm remembering right, forces you to flip to the Golem side. If you flip to the Golem side, he becomes an enemy and you have to defeat him to flip him back. The benefits of him is that his threat is very low at 3, the lowest in the game. And after you travel to a location, you raise your threat by 1 to draw a card, so he provides card draw. If you never had to flip him to Golem, he'd be pretty good. I think. Pretty good if you never had to flip him to Golem, but you do, and so his use is very limited. I just don't think he beats much. He's the downside of flipping to Golem when you don't want him to is a lot. He can't have attachments. His stats aren't much to speak of. He just provides the card draw, the low threat. But his theming kind of hurt him in terms of his power, which makes sense. I have no objection to the way the card's designed. But it doesn't lead me to recommend him very highly. Thalin, a core set hero, got a lot of use in multiplayer, didn't get a lot of use out of him in solo. Solo, progression mode, core set requires willpower, and Legolas, Thalin kind of in the same category. They don't have a lot of willpower. They got a lot of use in combat though, and I've seen some solo players make use of Thalin to good effect. I'd probably rank him in like the, I don't know, C+ category. Or maybe even he could go occasionally useful in progression mode. That might be a more appropriate place for him. But he's not going to be one of the, certainly nowhere near like a core set Eowyn or even Aragorn or Gimli. I got a lot more use out of him, found them to be more powerful. Tactics Theoden. Decent stats. Each hero with a printed tactics resource icon gets +1 willpower, so he's got some use in a monosphere tactics deck. I tried him a little bit. I found that less good in practice than it sounds on paper, and therefore didn't get much use out of him. I don't find him to be that good. I think he's better in theory. Then the real downside to the monosphere tactics deck is willpower, and that really limits it in terms of what it can beat. It's not a lot of tactics heroes have strong willpower. You could pair him with tactics Eowyn to help a bit with that. Bump her to 5 willpower. It's possible to make it work. That's why I don't have it in F. But certainly he doesn't deserve to go higher than that in my opinion. Spirit Theoden, a card I love in concept. Reduce the cost of the first, or in theory, reduce the cost of the first Rohan ally you play from your hand each round by 1 to a minimum of 0. Cost reduction for Rohan allies, pretty strong stats. He's got a sword which is pretty good. I like him. I didn't find him as powerful as I hoped I would, unfortunately. But still, I'd rank him as, he was so much fun to play, and he has enough power that I'd rank him as able to beat some hard quests, and he's kind of an archetype unlocker. The Rohan archetype was around for a while before that, but he gave new life to it later in the game. So I have him ranked as a B champion, though I don't think I used him in my progression series, but I did really like him when I experimented with him. And he's got strong attachments, Harrogrim and Golden Shield, Snowmane. So I like this card, fun to play, capable, not super powerful, unfortunately. Rohan, along with a lot of the other archetypes, remained on the weaker side compared to just playing generically powerful cards. But I did really enjoy playing him, and found him reasonably powerful. Theodred, a champion I loved in progression mode, and considered very strong in progression mode. He was one of the core set heroes I used to beat Escape from Dol Guldur in progression mode. Not going to say too much about him because he's a core set hero, but he's very good. I liked him a lot. Thorin Oakenshield. If you control at least 5 dwarf characters, add 1 additional resource. So he's part of the dwarf swarm deck. I wanted to like him a lot more than I did. The problem with him is that he's overshadowed by Dian. If you're playing a dwarf deck, it's tough to justify playing him over Dian, and it's tough to justify playing both of them. You can play a Monosphere leadership dwarf deck. I tried it. I didn't find it anything particularly special. So he goes in a tier that is not a real high priority. I wanted to like him more than I did. He's overshadowed by Dian in the same sphere, unfortunately for him. Thorin Stonehelm. After he's declared as an attacker, discard the top card of your deck to deal 1 damage to an enemy engaged with you. So that would kind of elevate his attack to 4. I never used this champion. I don't think he gives new life to the dwarf archetype or anything. Why would I use him over Gimli from the Tactics Sphere? I loved Gimli. And found Gimli OP and taking out some very hard to kill enemies. Thorin's gonna be okay. You're gonna be real sad when you discard a card you really wanted. I just don't think much of this. Don't see much reason to play him. Don't see much reason to recommend him. Just play Gimli. Gimli will fulfill the combat role, and he'll do it better. Thranduil. I loved the Sylvan archetype. I found it a lot of fun. A lot of fun. And Thranduil, play a Sylvan ally from your hand. You do not need a resource match. It's kind of a bizarre ability. You can play it as a combat action, and only then do you not need a resource match. His stats are meh. He fulfills a defense role in the Sylvan deck. Just because of his... I mean, he's fun to play. I might have played him once in progression mode. Certainly no Celeborn, and you don't have to have him for the Sylvan deck, for sure. He's meh for me, unfortunately. His ability is a bit odd to me. Play a Sylvan ally from your hand. I'd rather see that be a quest action. I'd much rather see that be a quest action, since Celeborn. That was one of my favorite things about the Sylvans is questing with them. So a more combat focused ability might make sense thematically, but didn't endear the hero to me. I would prefer to see that be a quest action. So, I can't recommend him very highly. He probably belongs there. Not even that particularly useful in progression mode since he arrived late in the cycle of the game. Thurindir gets +1 willpower for each side quest in the victory display. Search your deck for a side quest and add it to your hand. And setup. So you start with a side quest. This enables, in theory, additional strategies based around side quests. I tried them a little bit. I found it reasonably powerful, but not as powerful as I hoped. So this was kind of an attempt to give new life to side quests which weren't seeing much use. And it does that to a certain degree, but it doesn't elevate like a side quest focused deck to spectacular heights or anything like that. But you can kind of use him for some interesting combos to get the combo out more reliably with like gather information or something like that. And there's some combos here. I wouldn't rank him as a very high priority hero, and if he was intended to kind of unlock the side quest archetype, I don't think he accomplished that, and therefore I wouldn't rank him as a very high priority buy. Tom Cotton hero. While you're engaged with an enemy with engagement cost higher than your threat, the first Hobbit ally you play each round does not require a resource match. After a Hobbit ally enters play, it gains +2 attack until the end of the round. I found that very useful recently in Scouring of the Shire. I'd rank him with the other Hobbit heroes. He's fun. He's fun in the Hobbit archetype. It's not a very powerful archetype, but it is a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. The Hobbit archetype. His threat's kind of high though for the Hobbit deck that wants to have low threat. You'd prefer 7 or even 6. This is a more like combat focused Hobbit archetype. But I like this hero a little bit, but not enough to recommend him very highly. For fans of Hobbits though, I'd recommend him. And last but not least is Treebeard hero, a hero I loved quite a lot and have used quite a bit, especially recently. I think he is very powerful, maybe even elite, maybe even like an A+ hero, due to his stats, his versatility. In a Bond of Friendship deck paired with Leadership Fella or Frodo or something like that, I found him very, very powerful. I like him a lot. Ally Treebeard is very good too, but even so, I like Hero Treebeard quite a bit. And I think he belongs in the A tier. And that's it. That's every hero in the game. The S tier heroes are heroes you will unequivocally not regret having in your collection. Especially Eowyn and Glorfindel. If you were Elrond with Vilya, those 3 heroes are so good that I do not think anyone will ever regret having those heroes. Those are the best the game has to offer. The other heroes in the top S tier are also very good. The S tier for progression mode, these are very good heroes for progression mode, but will fall off later. Same with A tier. Once you've got all the elite heroes, you can start branching off into either the fun and very powerful or the fun and unlocking new archetype type heroes, depending on what your goals are in the game. If your goals are simply to beat the hardest quests the game has to offer, you can safely ignore the B tier. Go with A tier, S tier, and you'll be happy with the results. Anything below that, and I'm offering no guarantees, especially the C tier, especially the F tier, especially the heroes I really only consider good in progression mode. If you buy them, don't expect any miracles. Buy them for fun, but don't expect any miracles. And the B tier heroes, buy but don't expect any miracles. Expect them to be fun, but don't be surprised if they let you down a little bit in terms of their power in solo play. But the S tier heroes you won't be disappointed in. So, thank you for watching. And thank you to everyone who has watched my videos. And in the future, I'll be making more content playing Nightmare Quests, and then likely moving into another game such as Marvel Champions. So thanks for watching.